We do have two presentations tonight. So I'm going to ask Dr. Dwayne Conway if he would start off our presentation, and we're going to hear from the JMG group, but I'll let Dr. Conway to do the introductions.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our JMG teacher, Mr. Smith. He's being joined tonight by Allie, Dylan, and Jackie. And I just want to give a quick plug to JMG. It's been an incredible addition to Maranacook. I'm always amazed at walking around the school and talking with different JMG students and just the great things that they have to say about the program and Mr. Smith. When Ms. Brackley and I were sitting there, we were kind of eavesdropping on them talking. And I'm going to steal a line from Dylan for a second. Dylan was talking, and he said, "This program has got me excited for my future." I just think that's so incredible. So without further ado, I'll get out of the way.
Well, good evening, everybody. Like Dwayne said, I am Sam Smith. I am the JMG specialist here at Maranacook. Dwayne asked me to come and just speak a little bit about the program, give you guys a brief kind of overview of it. First, I just want to touch on JMG's relationship with Maranacook. I just want to say that it's been really, really outstanding, and I've been welcomed with open arms here. This is a first-year site here, so this is the first year JMG's been here, and I'm also a first-year JMG worker, if you will. So coming here, brand new site, it's kind of intimidating. But my first encounter with everybody here at Maranacook was the advisee day out in August at the camp in Wayne. And as soon as I walked in the door, I didn't feel alone. And I felt I have so much support here all the time. I just want to say that our relationship is really, really good right now. And I expect it to be that way even better in the future as well. I'm going to let the students do most of the talking tonight, as I do most of it all the time anyway. And we'll take some questions if you guys have any at the end. But before I let them speak, I just want to say something that JMG is focusing in on this year is the concept of storytelling, kind of getting these kids inspired to make their own story and then have them tell their own story when it's all said and done after that. Kind of make something out of the cards that you were dealt. And I'll say that these three students behind me are going to have very, very successful stories. I have no doubt about it. So first up is our president of the JMG program, Allie. And Allie is going to give you a little bit more info about JMG and go from there.
Hi guys, I'm Allie Lera. I'm the president here at JMG. I've been in JMG for 6 years. Actually, I transferred from Waterville Senior High School. And for those of you who don't know, JMG is a nonprofit organization that helps students transition into their college years. We teach leadership skills, we teach communication skills and team building skills. We also deal with financial, social, and academic barriers, and we try to get through that. I plan on going to UMF and studying psychology, and after our first year out of high school, our JMG specialists actually keep in contact with us. So I'm looking forward to having Sam text me every once in a while, making sure I'm doing okay. And my previous JMG specialist, Dana Boucher, she actually still keeps in contact with me even though I go to a different school. We have a lot of things planned this year, and Jackie will be telling us about that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jackie Gordon, and I'm a senior here at Maranacook, and I'm the Vice President of Leadership Development with the Career Association. And I'm here to talk about some of the things we've learned this year so far, such as GNAP, or GNAP, if you will. GNAP is an acronym that stands for Greeting, Name, Affiliation, and Purpose, and it is significant because first impressions are very important. So simple things such as eye contact and firm handshakes are important factors of GNAP, and there are important things we've learned this year, such as communication skills through team building activities, and we've also done email etiquette. etiquette. We've also built up our resumes and met with several guest speakers, and after I graduate, I plan to attend college and possibly enlist, so something I look forward to is maintaining contact with Mr. Smith because that's something that JMG specialists do. So, thank you.
Hi, Hi, my name is Dylan McIntosh, and I'm part of the JMG program here at McIntosh, and I'm going to be talking about what we are going to be doing in the coming months. First is the Career Development Conference at the CDC, which is going to be held at the Thomas College. And at the CDC, there are going to be a lot of competitions such as public speaking, interview skills, and things like that. The competitions are going to be judged by business owners and college representatives. And the CDC is a great way for JMG to represent itself to the Maine community as a whole and Maine businesses. So that's great for us. And other things we're going to be doing in the following months are job attainment and job survival skills and financial literacy, which are all important, like very important aspects for us to learn. And Mr. Smith, the JMG program, and I would like to formally invite you all to our closing ceremony that is going to be May 6th, 6 to 7 p.m., right here at the PSC in McIntosh. And do you guys have any questions for us? Yeah.
What types of students are part of JMG, and how do you get the younger students interested throughout the school year?
Yeah, so what I encountered with this year was we have a fantastic guidance department. We have a specific criteria for a student to be in the program. They have to have at least 4 social, academic barriers. It's a wide range of list of things. But the guidance department knows a lot about that information, and Kim and Sarah here at the high school have been very, very outstanding and helped me, because I was new and I didn't know any of the students here, and so they've really helped me pick the right kids for the program. And that being said, sometimes you don't always get the right kids in the program, and sometimes they like it for a little bit, but then they don't buy in, and that's okay. We like to say in JMG that they need to have it and they want to, but they also need to be able to benefit from it as well. So that's kind of the process on that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So is there coursework in this, or?
I'm sorry, who just said? Oh, I'm sorry.
You're in car.
Yeah, coursework, yes. So we have a curriculum, wide range of things. Dylan touched on a few of them: financial literacy, job attainment, job survival skills. Right now we're in a huge financial literacy unit where the kids are learning about budgeting and learning about what credit is and why that's important. So we have a wide range of curriculum that we discuss as well. John.
How many students are currently in the program?
Right now I believe I have 29, which my manager, Lindsay Withy, tells me is really good for a first year site. So. Yeah.
They're not all, you guys are seniors, right? You are all seniors? No?
2 seniors and Dylan's a junior.
Oh, but are there kids in all grades, or is it mostly juniors and seniors?
Right now I have kids 9 through 12. This year's been, scheduling-wise, was a little funky first year program. Ideally, we like to have freshmen, sophomores, in their own periods, and then juniors and seniors in their own period. Right now they're kind of mixed, but I do have all kids in all grades.
Is this a before class, or we're actually making a period for you?
It's an actual period. It's an elective credit as well. I have 6 classes during total. So there's 8 periods, 4 black, 4 gold, and I teach 6.
Any other questions from the board?
I'm good.
Thank you guys very, very much for coming in and talking about your program. Allie, Jackie, and Dylan, excellent job. I know it can be a little intimidating, but you guys did an excellent job. Thank you very much. And we do have a second presentation tonight. I'm going to invite up Mrs. Amy Ryder. I don't know if she can follow that presentation, but she's going to try.
I definitely can't, because the kids are way cooler than I am, and I also can't see. So,
Yeah. Turn.
He needs it.
Yeah.
You have to be on tape.
Yeah.
okay. I'll do my best. So first of all, thank you for having me back. The last time I was at the board was probably 2 years ago, when I was applying for approval for the sabbatical that I finished with the ending of last school year. So I've been back not quite a semester, and got invited back by you all or by someone on the board to talk about the work I did while I was gone. And I promised Jay I would try and keep it to 10 or 15 minutes, but I can get really excited about the work, so I'll see what I can do with that. The work I envisioned for my sabbatical project was all around the math curriculum. So I've been teaching in the district for give or take 20 years, probably a little bit more, so forever. And ever since I came here, I had this great vision, if I could only find the time, of really looking at our math curriculum. Because it's an issue not just with our students, but generally in society. People feel like it's okay to say, I'm not a math person. People don't feel like it's okay to say, I'm not literate, or I can't understand social studies. But people feel seriously okay with saying, I'm not a math person. And that comes back to the way we teach kids about math, and the way we talk to students about math, and the way we talk to our own kids about math, so that they feel like it's okay to say, I'm not good at that. Whereas everywhere else, we're like, oh, no, everybody can be good at this. Well, everybody can be good at math. And so my whole vision around my sabbatical project was, how can we make math more accessible to all students? So my project had 3 basic things that I promised the board I would do. One was research, and I love research, because like, who doesn't love some good reading and research? So I read 3 books on best teaching practice for middle school mathematics, and also best practices for involving parents in understanding how we teach mathematics. Because there's a lot of research out there that negative parent attitudes can negatively influence student outcomes. So we have to invite parents to the table. So I spent a bunch of my time researching and reading, which was totally awesome. I also said I would take 2 classes. So I took these 2 fabulous classes offered by Stanford University, taught by Professor Joe Bowler, who is sort of a math guru, and they were wonderful. And they were focused also on how to make math accessible for students while also challenging students. And then the best part of the project was I looked at our middle school math curriculum, which in grades 6 through 8 has 15 units. And I said to you all 2 years ago that I would look at those and figure out how to create some real-world introductory problems that would be high engagement, high level, but have low entry and almost no ceiling. Easy, right? No problem. And then along with that, I would look at how I could introduce those units to parents with a letter of introduction, create rubrics and other things, and then help staff sort of look at how to do that. So for example, because this is the most fun part, right? And if you ever, I don't know what sort of things you have to do, if you ever want to come in and see one of these, just get in touch with me, and I'll let you know what's teaching one. You can come in and play, and it'll be awesome. So at the beginning of the year, I had an 8th grade math class. There's like 20 kids in there. And we got into our first unit on linear equations and looking at functions. The first day they came in for that unit, I had up the Domino's Pizza website. Ever been on their website? Kind of fun, especially for like a middle school kid, right? So you click and you order all your stuff, right? So you have it up there and you can click and order all your stuff, and then you get a price, but it never tells you the price per anything. You worked on camera. Feeling very confined. I'll try. So you don't get the price per item. So students got the prices of various pizzas and various items and then had to work through how can I figure out what it would cost for certain things. And they were basically looking for patterns. And they didn't know what linear functions were. They didn't know what functions were, but we jumped in and we spent days with that project. And then we left it and we learned, and then we came back to it to look at that from that. Or, for example, 8th grade math also does the Pythagorean theorem, which if you remember way back when, right triangles, and if you're given any 2 sides, you can find the third. But kids don't know that automatically. It's not like an intuitive thing, right? So we had this problem, once again, lots of video problems, and these 2 guys are on the beach, and they're hungry, and there's a taco cart. And one guy says, I'm going straight to the taco cart. The other one says, well, if I go up to the road and this way, it's going to be faster because the road is going to be faster walking. So they spend time solving that without the Pythagorean theorem, bringing other skills to bear, and then we revisit once we have it. So those are the types of problems, and we have them 6 through 8. Probably my favorite one. Has anybody ever seen the movie Zoolander?
Yes.
Okay, a couple of people. So you know the scene where they're going to build him a school, right? And they've got the model of the school. If you haven't seen it, it's about a male model who might not have done the best in school and lacks some common sense. And so they're going to build him a school for kids who don't read so good and want to learn other things. So he comes in and they show him the model and he gets furious because he doesn't realize it's a model. And he's like, who is this? This is a school for ants. And he knocks it off the table. So you show it, and there's a scene in that movie where he goes, it would have to be at least, and he says, 3 times bigger, which is also hilarious. But we stop it before then, and then kids have to look at what they have, and they're working on how much bigger would it actually have to be. And that's an intro to a 6th grade unit on ratio and proportion. So you get to really assess where your students are and what they know prior to jumping in, but not with necessarily a paper and pencil assessment. So that's the bulk of the work I did, and it was really awesome to dig into problems, find problems, revamp them, figure out the best sort of scaffolding for students, then create teacher directions for them, because not everybody's going to be comfortable for this. I teach middle school.
That's right there, Mr. Chair.
There are standards.
You'll get half my stuff. So then the work actually continued when I got back. I came back and I got in touch with our new math coach and with Kristen Levac. And during all of our first professional development with our math teachers in the middle school, we rolled out these units. So all regular ed staff has had an opportunity to look at these units, to co-plan and teach one of these units and reflect on them. And the vast majority of staff have used them in their classrooms already. So that's sort of the jumping off point, but we're not done. We have a book study group that's about to start grades 6 through 12 that has to do with quality tasks and all that. The book is great. And we have a K through 12 math committee that's about to start. So I view this work as a beginning, not an end, but I think it's already impactful on students and will continue to be. Now I've talked too fast and I've wandered, so I'll take questions. And I'll stay
So
right
what impact is this going to have on the WIA,
What impact? Well,
on scores?
I'm not sure any one thing can be attributed to impacting NUIAs in a statistically significant way. So I can't help you with that. What I can tell you is that research shows if we work on students' problem solving, test scores will improve. These are based on, and the rubrics are based on student problem solving. So we are doing the best research-based instruction with high-quality problems. Whether or not that impacts NUIA, I cannot tell you, but that's what I can tell you about what I've done. I don't think anybody could honestly tell you that any given thing is going to impact NUIA. I think they would be lying to you.
Okay. What is your timeline as far as implementation? Is it already implemented?
Oh, it's being implemented, yes.
Okay, so it's fully implemented.
Well, so everything's up and on our district curriculum. So all math teachers have access to the curriculum map for 6 through 8, anyone who teaches 6 through 8. Everything I've done is on there and available digitally. Mm-hmm. We've had all teachers so that they have access to it, have seen it, and have co-taught it, so it's available to be used. No one is required to use them, right? Like, that's not the way it works, but they're out there and they're being used.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some groups have already met and been like, hey, can we move 2 of these? We think they fit this unit better and that unit better, so.
So, go ahead, David.
You said you had future goals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some ideas of
Sure.
those adventures?
Well, one of the things I'm really excited about is the K-12 math committee. So prior to coming here 2 years ago, the year before I presented at a national math teachers conference with a group of K-12 folks, and that was amazing. And the work we did that year working together changed my mathematics instruction. I, for the first time probably ever, really understood and dug into the math my students did prior to coming to me, and some of the math my students did after leaving me. So my goal is, with a group of people like that starting to meet again, I believe the first meeting date's in February, I have it in my calendar, that we can be looking at that and be looking at the book that many of us are doing as a book study group talks about high quality tasks. And I feel like these are, and so spreading that, like, and I know elementary school teachers are using some really high quality tests, and I'd love to see them. So the idea that we'll be sort of cross-pollinating across schools is really exciting to me.
Is this another computer program that we're buying?
No, it's just being disseminated through Google because, you know, everything is.
So we don't own it, Google does.
So I'm not sure what you're asking. So the work I did either used open source tasks that then I revamped and typed up things on my computer that I loaded onto our curriculum document. So Google doesn't own it any more than anything you type in Google Docs. It's something that was created, so it's not purchased.
So I just want a better understanding for 6th through 8th. Are all the teams using your math curriculum ideas, or just some of them, or how is it coming out?
Sure, that's a great question. So everyone who has been a part of our professional development, which are all the teachers, have had an opportunity to see them and look at them and at least teach one of them. I can't tell you what everyone is doing. I know when I reached out to middle school staff, everyone had said they had used at least one. So that's the only data I collected for this meeting, was to make sure that at least it was out there and people felt comfortable, and the data I got back from all the teachers was that at least people have used at least one of them.
Will you be checking back in with them? Is this that maybe you
Well, I
could build on?
have a math PD on Friday where I'll be teaching with folks, so that'll be another opportunity to see how that's going. And I know that 7th grade used another one because they reached out to me about whether they could switch the order, and I was like, of course, it's supposed to be a living document. You know, if you feel like it fits better somewhere than it did, then that's awesome. And I've also made some changes like, hey, when I did this with kids, this would have been a great thing to add. So it's sort of a living document, as it were.
So you're getting lots of positive feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I might be getting negative feedback too, but I have a meeting on Friday.
Okay.
Mrs. Ryder, do you mind explaining a little bit about the sabbatical process, just because we have new board members here that have probably never been through that process and really don't know what that all involves? Do you mind taking just a minute?
I'd be happy to, and it reminds me that I missed the last page of my thing because I got wrapped up in math. So the way, and I actually reviewed it this morning, the way that the sabbatical is written in our district is that if you've been an employee in the district for 7 consecutive years, then you can apply for a sabbatical. And you can either apply for a half year with that, your full pay for half a year, or a full year with a half a year's pay and benefits. Does that make sense? And other than that, it's pretty wide open. That the work you propose is supposed to have academic benefit to RSU38, and that the decision is that the superintendent is supposed to make a recommendation to the board, and then the board has the ability to approve or not approve a sabbatical. And one of the things I learned in finally taking a sabbatical is I think it's a missed opportunity here. So we live in a world and in a school district with large turnover in jobs. We don't live in a place or work in a place anymore where people have a job. I'm the exception, not the rule anymore. And so sabbatical is not offered in a lot of districts. So maybe we don't pay the most, or maybe we have other things running against us as a rural district. But if we pitch and get people to take this opportunity, not only will we bring back rich things for our students and our staff, but we may retain staff more. I'm already scheming for my next sabbatical, which means I'm here for another decade. Now, some of you might not find that so good, but if you're not looking to replace me, that's probably a plus, right? And that's a legitimate reason for people to stay, because it's such an opportunity. I've never in my professional life been able to sit and research and work sort of single-mindedly on a project, and that was awesome. So I think we should be publicizing it. I think we should get it out there. We should get, like, when we interview candidates, we should talk about it, right? Because 7 years is a long time. It's not like somebody's gonna be like, ooh, maybe I'll stay. Like, it's a pretty big commitment, right? And then you have to stay for 2 after. So really, yeah, for a decade.
Go ahead, Patty.
I just want to say that is so awesome because 2 things. One, I remember you talking about doing amazing math curriculum development stuff 20 gazillion years ago, and it's so amazing that you have done it. And I think it is also awesome because I've heard different things from people who have had sabbatical projects over the years here and in other school districts, and they're not all immediately applicable to staff or to where you can see the impact for students right away. And it's so awesome what you've done because it has both of those things.
Thank you.
Do we have a sign-in sheet back there? Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Amy.
Yeah.
Citizens' comments? I see none. Adjustments to the agenda by the board? Action items. Approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Budget workshop.
All right, so we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to ask Diane to go ahead and get the projector up and running. And I'm actually going to move to the podium this time. This is a little bit of a change for us, but you'll see as we get going along here. As the presentation is coming up, I'd like to direct the board members to a green paper that is in your folders just before we get started. I think it's a good idea to take a couple minutes and just talk a little bit about our budget process here, so that any new board members can ask any questions before we kind of get into the bulk of what's going on. I'm not going to read all of this document to you, but I am going to highlight a couple of things that I think are important. So the budget for any large organization has obviously many components to it, which in the case of a school system will often generate some very strong feelings in the community. So in order to have a sound budget the community can support, the board must be able to hear the views of the community members and the town officials, as well as have time to consider the details, the expert advice of the school administrators, and to also have some time to deliberate amongst yourselves. So to accomplish that goal, we follow kind of a structured agenda for each budget discussion. The structure is designed to provide full and clear information to all and allow each person who wishes to contribute to the discussion an opportunity to do so, and give the board ample opportunity to deliberate as well, and come to reasonable conclusions. So the basic agenda is there. We do have a sign-up sheet for members of the public who wish to speak on the budget. For example, this evening, because we are talking about the budget, that sign-up is at the back of the room, and you'll notice on our agenda, it happens after the presentations, just so that you know. The particular budget topic will be introduced, and relevant information will be provided by myself or any staff member that I think would be valuable to speak on the question. Board members should raise their hands for the purpose of being recognized, and Dr. Carr, our chair, will kind of help direct those questions as we move along here. Once all the board member questions are answered, then we will go to the public comment, and again, Dr. Carr will kind of recognize those people as they come forward and help us through that process as well. If there is more public comment than can be reasonably accommodated during a session, the board may choose to schedule another time to take those additional comments. So just a little background there so that everyone is kind of comfortable with where we're going. So having said that, this particular presentation is a little bit different. We usually start, if you've taken a look ahead of time, at kind of the schedule. The building administrators, principals of each schools, are usually the ones that go first. And I'm going to tell you right from the get-go before we jump into the presentation that we've had multiple meetings already about the budget and discussions around budget. So that's kind of why I'm up here today because I'm kind of speaking a little bit for the administrators, but I also want to be very transparent in letting you know what we have talked about early on before we even got to tonight's meeting. I know the screen's kind of sideways and hard to see, so I will be reading a lot from the presentation, and I apologize for that because that's usually not good presentation practice, but I am going to do that tonight because I think it's really important. So having said that, Mrs. McGregor is going to help me run the show here. So we, at our last board meeting, set the goal of promoting student success in all areas as we strive for academic excellence while maintaining fiscal responsibility. So that's right out there. We've talked about it as an administrative team, so it's right out there, and we know exactly where we're moving from as we go forward. So I want to give you a little baseline data before we get into too far along here, and I do have some handouts that I will ask some of the administrators to pass out as we're going through this. And for the public that's here tonight, we will take those extras and put them on the back table, so if you want to pick something up, you are certainly welcome to do that as we go through. So one of the important things when we're building a budget to understand is that the state calculates things based on your enrollment first numbers, your student enrollments. So I just want to give you a little bit of perspective so that you guys kind of know what we're dealing with. So this year on October 1st numbers, in our in-district count, meaning students that live and go to school in our 4 communities of Manchester, Mount Vernon, Wayne, and Reedfield, we have 1,139 students. The actual count, and we went in to check what our actual count was in January, but please keep in mind that they use October 1st numbers, but for the purpose of this discussion, I wanted to put that up there just so that you had a reference number to work with. So you will see that our count as of January was 1,208 students. So the question is probably going to be, why is it different? What's different going on here? So the difference is that we have about 69 students that come into this school district on tuition agreements, or they come in through superintendent agreements. So we have about 69 students that come to our school but don't live within the district. How that works with how the state calculates things and I'm not going to get into the weeds that goes into it, but I just want you to have a general idea of it. So they basically will say, okay, you have about 1,200 students. We're going to calculate how much per student you're going to get. That's kind of on the first page of what's called the ED 279. Then on the second page of that, they go, okay, this is your calculation of how much money we're going to give you per student. Then they go back and they say on in-district students. So that's where they go back to the top number that I have there of 1,139. So they fund based on 1,139 students using that calculation. Does that kind of make sense? It kind of gets a little fuzzy at times, so please feel free to ask questions as we're going along. So that means there's a revenue side of the budget. Those 69 students come in later by schools that actually have tuition bills that we get from those schools. We say we've got, let's say, 20 students from Fayette. I'm using that just as an example because we do have a lot of Fayette students that come here. We have 20 students that come from Fayette, so we bill them out and they pay that tuition. But it doesn't get calculated in. It kind of is this pot of money that sits out there that we can't depend on because that 69 number could go up or it could go down. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So then the next thing that I want to talk about is property evaluations because that's the thing that you're going to hear the most about as people go through. So with Bridget Williams' help, we got into the state site and we pulled out property evaluations for the 4 towns that make up our community make up our school district, so that you can see, and I'm just going to tell everyone right up front, those evaluations have all gone up in every single town. Some towns more than others. I'm going to pass that out and we can talk about it a little bit more. Starting one side than the other. So when the state is doing their calculations for us, they're going to look at property evaluations, and you will see, like I said, that every town has had a change in their evaluations. No towns ever go down in evaluation. Obviously, that would be, towns just don't want that to happen. They want it to rise, but that has an impact on how much money we're going to get from the state, as well as how we're going to get funded. So that's something we have to take into consideration as we're going along here, okay? So the next thing that I wanted to hand out to you is the enrollment, and it is broken down by classes, and it is broken down by our towns, and then obviously middle school, high school. And this is printed off right exactly from the state website. So these are the numbers we're working with, just so that you guys kind of know what's going on. So as they are being passed around, just very quickly, I'm going to give you totals, and then you can look at the other breakdowns that are there. The totals for our pre-K through 5 program is we have 564 students in pre-K through 5. That's all of our elementary schools. If you look at the middle school, we have 292 students in the middle school. And then at the high school, we have 353 students based on this report. The breakdown is there. I'm just going to kind of let you see that. Remember, if you see, for example, in Manchester, grade 1, you'll see 10/10. That means there's actually 2 classes, 2 teachers there, okay? So if you only see one single number, that's 1 teacher that's there. Just so that you can kind of have a frame of reference for that as you go forward. And then the fourth thing, as you're looking in, that's a lot of information just in and of itself right there to process, but something else that we are going to have to consider that is going to have an impact on what we get for a calculation from the state of Maine is what our free and reduced population is. Traditionally, the Marana-Cook area schools have been somewhere in the low 30s as far as free and reduced population. That number, for whatever reason, is at about 28%. And this is as a whole district, it's not by school. I'm just talking from a district level, just so you know. So that number has dropped to about 28%. So that's going to have a dramatic impact on what the state uses for a calculation for us. So these are kind of factors we, as an administrative team, have been talking about quite a bit over the last couple months, is what's going to affect our budget as we're looking forward. And these are the things that have a pretty big impact on that. I'm going to pause for a second. Yeah, of course, Dr. Carr.
So Jay, you mentioned that the difference in student count. What you didn't tell people is that the 69 are based upon tuition rate,
Yes.
not what we get for the state. So
Right.
we don't get anything from the state for the 69.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that, Dr. Carr, because that is an important point to know, that the state sets the tuition rate, and that's what we have to work with. We can't say we want more or less for any particular student. That rate is set by the state, and that's what we have to work within when we're kind of billing out for those tuition students or those superintendent agreements. So going to the next slide. So I wanted to give you a little bit of perspective as you look at this. So here are some major factors that we have to pay attention to as an administrative team. Again, we talked a whole lot about these. As we have started to build the budget, health and dental, within the budget, we only get this we'll only get these numbers a little bit later on, closer actually to right before the actual budget vote. So we have to estimate what we think the increase is going to be. Last year, the increase was 0%. We got very, very lucky. It was 0%. But as we've built the budget this year, we know that those trends that they give us for health and dental can kind of go up and kind of go down. We know that we're probably not going to get 0% again. With Bridget's help, traditionally we've always kind of said what's the max we probably are going to hit. It's usually 10% and 5% for dental. So that's what I asked her to build into the budget as kind of a placeholder, knowing that we may be able to reduce that down a little bit. So health and dental alone, in the big picture of the budget, accounts for 1.56% increase to the budget. Just based on those additions in the budget, it's 1.56 to the overall budget itself. That's how much the budget's going up. Make sense so far? So the bond payment, which the town supported us with, which I think is fantastic. We are very, very lucky we had the town support on that. But we also have to pay attention to what does that mean for impact to the budget. So with the new bond payment that we're going to have to make, that's a 2.23% increase to the total budget. And then wages and salaries, and when we talk about that, we're not just talking about teacher salaries. We have several other contracts that are coming up for negotiation this year, as well as things that we have to pay attention to. And one of the things that we did, and I think the board totally took the right stance on it, and I think the teachers greatly appreciated it, is we wanted to try to take care of our teachers going forward. So this isn't just teacher salaries, this is everyone in the district. When you're looking at wages and salaries, that's a 1.6% increase to the overall budget. So when you look at that, and you kind of start to put that together, we're somewhere very close to 6% increase just based on those three things in the budget. Okay, so I did ask Bridget to kind of put together I'm going to call it a first draft of kind of where we stood. And I'm going to ask her to hand that out as well so that you can take a look at it. You'll notice at the grand total on the far right, bottom corner, the increase where it stands right now, just based on these things alone, is 5.9% to the last year's budget, okay?
What you didn't mention so far is that you have two payments of the bond this year.
Right. Yeah, that's what's in that quote.
So next year, that one payment comes down.
Yes. Yeah.
The bond part of this goes down.
Yeah. So as she's passing that out, I'll go to the next slide and let you know that we've been discussing these things as an A team, and specifically at the building level, principal level. So there's some directives I gave the administrators as they were putting together their budget. So our goal was to keep our budget to little or no increase in overall spending. Our target was about 2%. That's what our target was as a team. Now, again, I'm going to kind of harp on this for a second. What you have in front of you is 5.9%, and we haven't even talked to the administrators yet about things they may want or need in their school. We haven't even done that yet, and we're at 5.9%. So I'm kind of harping on that for a reason as this presentation kind of goes on. So my goal was to increase transparency and equity of spending practices across all of our schools, elementary, middle, high school, right across all schools. So what I asked the principals to do was I asked them to budget based on a per student allocation. So basically I said, here's a target number. You have X number of students in your school. Take that, let's say it's 100 students, times it by the allocation, that's how much money you have to spend. So we're trying to divert the money, I say divert the money, and that's a very bad word to use. We're trying to make sure that it's equitable. Every student has the same amount spent on them across all of our schools, is the point we're trying to make there. And that's transparent to everyone. So we can, with a straight face, say, this is how much is being spent. We have X number of students. This is how much money is being spent towards instruction of our students. I did because I felt it was very important. We do have some Title I schools, and again, most of you know this already, in Mount Vernon and Wayne. So I did give them a slightly higher allocation to work with, because as a Title I school, you're working on specific things around literacy and or math practices. That's where Title I is meant to help supplement what's going on in your schools. So then I asked the principals to take a look at class sizes. At the elementary school level, I expected our class sizes to be between 15 and 20 students across all schools. In the middle school, they do a multi-age team approach, so we looked at about 18 to 22 students per team in the middle school. And then I asked all high school classes to look at a class size of 10 or more in a high school class, high school course sections. And we've had, again, conversations around that. So as we're looking at the budget, realizing kind of where we are right now, we are going to have to look at positions in this district going forward. I think any position, anyone that leaves our district for any reason, we have to have a conversation. It's not just an automatic, we're going to refill this position. We're going to have a conversation on the need and how to balance out class sizes that go along with that. So it's not just, I don't want anyone to walk out of this, and especially any teachers that are here, thinking we're looking to RIF teachers out of positions. We are not looking to do that. We are just going to look at attrition and can we or do we need to refill that position? And that's a conversation that will happen with the administrator from that particular building about if it should be filled or if it should not be, or if it should be left unfilled at this point. But I very much trust the administrators to come back and say, Jay, we've got this, we don't need this position, or Jay, we really need this position, and this is why. We will definitely have those conversations kind of moving forward when it comes to positions within our district. Of course.
Back again. Because allocated money, and I believe we get most money for the high school, or the elementary, I should say. And then it's not equal between elementary and middle.
Yeah, so I will tell you that what I asked the principals to budget for was $175 per student for instructional supplies, and then again, an extra $50 for those Title I schools. So that's the allocation that we use to calculate.
No, let's go back again. So the amount of money between the different schools, levels of school, the three.
So you're talking elementary to middle, middle to high school?
Right.
I just want to make sure.
The state pays is different. In other words, the tuition that we get for a child depends on what school they're in. And so the middle school and the high school are two different rates.
Right.
So tuition, the state does come up with two rates. They come up with a K-8 rate. So all of our elementaries and middle schools would all have the same tuition rate. And then they have a 9-12 rate. The K-8 rate at the state does not have a maximum tuition. The high school level does have a maximum. We are at the maximum level.
So what is the level for high school right now?
I do not have that with me, Gary, tonight.
Yeah, and I don't know that off the top of my head either. I apologize. We can get that though. Yeah.
An imbalance when we have that, because it has to be a reason for that difference in the cost. So in other words, whatever one is which, I don't have any idea what the number is.
The supply number would be a very small portion of that number, though. And what Jay is talking about is strictly the supplies, textbooks, and curriculum.
Oh,
materials, is what he was using.
So we'll go to our next slide, and we're almost done. So I spent time with my principals, and I'm going to present their budgets, and you'll see why in just a reason, but I'm going to present for them. We worked a lot as a team and had a lot of discussions, and that's why I'm standing here today presenting this. And of course, we'll still answer any questions you may have, but I thought it was very important that you kind of understand why I'm standing here. So we came to these agreements as building principals. So we are not making any new requests. So normally we've come to you guys with like a list of things that we'd like to see within the school. Knowing the parameters that we have, there's no new requests going into the new school year. And this is why. I think it's important that you have this information. So we recognize the financial constraints of this budget due to the investment that was made in facilities through the recent bond. We understand what that means. We want to honor the board budget goal of knowing that each school has individual wants, but we understand the needs to examine this budget from a district perspective. So rather than looking at just their individual schools, they're taking the wide perspective look at it. We will address future needs in individual schools in future budget cycles. We just realize this is probably not the year to do that. Next slide. We also don't want the budgeting process to become contentious between the towns and the districts. We want to make sure that we keep those open lines of communication. We understand that towns are looking at various scenarios, which is certainly their right. So we want to try to keep those lines of communication open, and we don't want to go down a road where we're becoming contentious about school versus towns. We're trying to avoid that as much as possible. As part of the administrative team, we have had and will continue to have meetings to discuss the factors that affect our budgets. And then finally, we acknowledge that our end goal of 2% has not been reached yet. Notice I underline that "yet" piece, and respectfully ask for your support in allowing the team to continue the work that they need to do around this particular budget. So with that, that's the end of my presentation, speaking for the administrator. So I'm going to return back to the table, and this is the part where you guys can start deliberating and asking questions as we move forward. So give me just a second.
Any board questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the administrative team for the work they're doing and the effort they're making, and I'm looking forward to all of us working together to continue that process that tries to protect our communities and support the students and the educational community.
Go ahead, Eddie.
In order to meet the goals that you have set, are you looking at any reductions in staff in any particular areas?
So the answer I'm going to give to that is no. We're going to we know in my short time here, we have seen turnover. So that's why I think we have to look at it kind of position by position. And I'd rather not, I don't want the message to go out that we're targeting one level or one school. I think we just have to be smart about having the conversation about whatever positions do open up. And they will open up. We've had in my short time, we've had changes in staff. So I think we address it case by case, and we don't look to say it has to come from one school or one level in particular.
Go ahead.
So I guess I not I guess, I know. I have a question when it comes to, you said you put a dollar value to every student. So I want to be clear what I'm asking. So my logic is you have Reedfield Elementary, you have, I don't know, look at the numbers. Smaller schools, like every student in a school, I think that's kind of hard to do. And maybe you can explain that logic a little more to me, because it's going to cost a little bit more. You have less students in a school. They deserve the same education as other kids. It's been a huge issue of mine in the past. This is nothing new for me to say. It's not the student's choice that people have decided to keep all these schools open.
Right.
So it costs money to keep these schools open. So whether you go to Manchester, Mount Vernon, or Reedfield or Wayne, as a student, it's not your choice. Your parents chose to live there if you're in the first grade.
Right.
And it's not your choice. We're choosing to keep schools open. So I think we got to be very cautious on that dollar value and where we cut, and make sure we keep an eye on that every student's going to have the equal opportunity. Because in past times, there was things that really surprised me, that certain students, and I'm not saying this is happening now, didn't get music or didn't get as much music or didn't get that. And I'm certainly not interested in going back to those times.
Yep, and we definitely aren't going back that way for sure. So just to clarify a little bit for you, Sean, that allocation that I gave was for instructional use, so that we know that every student has that much spent on them across the district, and it's equitable. We know that there's some issues with how much it costs to run a big school versus a small school. So economy of scale is an issue, obviously. But at the same time, we want to make sure that every student instructionally has the same amount spent on them. I think that's really important.
I appreciate that answer, because I think we need to be real with the taxpayers and the parents that it does cost money to keep these schools open.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Go ahead.
When it comes to, so if my understanding and that with budgets, worked around them a lot, is so there's a 5.9% increase because of the three factors you mentioned, but also it might not increase the budget, but my understanding is when the evaluations are high, student in the free and reduced lunch is lower, and enrollment isn't high, that's going to cause the district's, the property taxpayer's share to go up. Do we have what's the time frame on that, Bridget? I know it's late in the game, but when will we know that time?
So the ED 279 usually comes out in, what I've lately heard is mid-February is when that's coming out. But again, that is a little bit of a toss-up of when we actually get it. But mid-February was kind of the timeline that I was given.
So it's not just increasing the budget, it's also increasing the amount, because the amount from the property taxpayer is going to go up.
Right.
So.
How about the computer? Have you looked at that?
We have started to talk about that, and Diane will be bringing that to you. I believe it's the next board meeting in February. February 5th, we'll bring that to you. And again, there's some things to think about around that, but I didn't ask Diane to be ready for that tonight. We'll be ready for that on the 5th. So.
Any further discussion? Citizens' comments.
Good evening. My name is John Harker, and for those of you who don't know me, I am a citizen of Mount Vernon, and I run two businesses, an ornamental nursery in Mount Vernon and Kentsill Kentsill Orchard. And I provide apples to the school through the Kennebec County Sheriff's Office program, where they come and pick my apples and then provide them to the school. So it works out pretty good, and so hopefully you've had maybe a couple of my apples during this school year. And I was on the board a number of years ago for a year, so I understand what you're all going through. And I actually came here tonight to ask Jay a question about providing a list ahead of time of all of the changes that you're going to make And he said, well, wait till I talk, and maybe you'll get a better sense of what's going on. So Jay, now I understand what you're saying. And so I'm glad about that. And I'm actually, after hearing your presentation, I'm really encouraged. You know, you're doing some really hard work. And I, as a citizen, appreciate that and appreciate the fact that you're trying to hold the line to keep the percentage increase reasonable for us going forward. And knowing that, so I just have a couple of quick comments and a question. And since the salaries are the big deal, I wondered, I haven't gotten a sense of whether you finished or finalized the contract negotiations yet this year, and whether that would impact it, or are we still part of a contract right now that for this fiscal year is continuing?
Yep. We were actually very lucky in that we closed the contract out right at the start of the school year, at the beginning of August. So the current collective bargaining agreement for professional staff, teaching staff, is a 3-year cycle that began basically at the beginning of August, and will run 3 years. And that number that I have up there, that 1.6% overall, that is factored in at this time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boy, you got good 3 years of easy going then. That's great. The second question I have is typically there's a fudge factor when you're dealing with the medical and dental, because you don't know what that is. And I was just curious, will you come back later if in fact it's lower and ask for some changes, or are you committed to, no, this is it, we're done?
Yeah. I'm going to let Bridget answer that one because she does that.
Okay, we usually start with the 10% just to be on the safe side, and I'd rather present worst-case scenario up front. Within the next few weeks, I should get a report from MEA that will tell me what my experience factor has been for the last 2 years. That will give me a little bit of a sense of what it may be coming in at, or at least what our experience is. It still doesn't give me what MEA is going to set for their rates, you know, overall rates. But we usually have the final rates right around the 1st of April. And so last year, we did have those before we voted on the budget, and I did make the changes in the budget to the actual Blue Cross rates before we voted the budget.
And the follow-up then to that is, if it goes down substantially, so you have some extra money, would you come back and propose some changes if on a list that you might develop?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we may not see that until later on.
Yep, yeah, exactly right, yeah.
Okay.
Once we know what the percentage really is,
Yeah.
then we will absolutely take a look at that and we will adjust down. And when you look at what our percentage currently is, if we're going to hit that 2% mark, we're going to have to adjust down, very much so.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, then, you've answered my questions for this evening, and thank you very much. I think you're doing a great job, and let's hope that we stay at that level for this particular year. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's almost April before you see the change in the medical.
I know, and in fact, that's why.
Very difficult. So right now, it appears high, but I don't know how many, do we have anybody out, majorly out?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that in a
Okay.
public meeting, just.
Well, I think what's nice is we're looking at the worst-case scenario.
We're looking at the worst.
Right.
And it always goes down.
Yep, and that's
We'll
good.
save
And
you at least one.
yeah, so I'll finish with my mantra of always support the teachers. So if there's any extra money and you think there's something that you can help with the teachers with, and in my particular case, it's in nutrition, and I'd love to get more of the teachers who have snacks in their drawers for the kids that can't eat. I hope maybe over time you can come up with another scenario that will help avoid that and get more food and good food into the kids. So that's what I'd like to see. So thank you very much, Jay.
Thank you.
And board, thank you.
Any other people? Nope. Any further discussion? Okay.
So we can go into executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to move into an executive session to discuss the information and confidential records pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056F.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you very much, everybody.